Today's video is going to give you some pointers to being an effective communicator, both when speaking to individual people or to a group. To help me illustrate this point, I'm going to use an example of a talk that has had a profound effect on me personally, one which I went into with no preconceptions as to who was delivering the talk and its content, but one which I came out of full of an incredible array of emotions and thoughts. Before I begin today's video, if you find it informative and helpful, please consider sharing it on social media platforms such as Twitter and Facebook, and subscribe for more content like this. Today I'm going to focus on communication skills that can be used by everyone and will help capture both the attention and the heart of the audience. Now, the most important point in this list is at the very end, so ensure you watch all the way through to get the most out of it. To help me explain how you can use the skills to be discussed, I'm going to use a talk Dr. Wayne Dyer did on a PBS show, which had a massive influence on me, at times leaving me laughing out loud, at other times speechless in self-reflection, and at times on the verge of tears. On listening to this talk, I couldn't help but wonder what it was that made me feel such strong emotion, and so I spent time analysing and understanding how this talk had such an impact. For those wondering who Dr. Wayne Dyer is, he's a motivational speaker, author of a huge number of books, a teacher and a philosopher. His work spans over the course of decades and he's influenced thousands of people over that time. For anyone interested, I will also be posting a link to the talk in the description below. Right, so with that said, what was it that made this talk so phenomenal? Ironically, given he's delivering in public, the first area of Wayne Dyer's talk that I picked up on was he listens. In the middle of the talk, he speaks of a horrifying experience a woman, Immaculée Ilibagiza, faced in the Rwandan genocide, where she had to survive 91 days in a tiny bathroom with 7 other women all being hunted to be killed. Her story shows the absolute worst of humanity, but at the heart of it shows the best as well. As he tells her story on stage, Dr. Wayne Dyer announces she's in the crowd and invites her to speak to the audience. As he does this, he listens to her speak, standing to the side, giving her the audience's attention. While she speaks, you see him in the back, completely and totally focused on her message and just listening to her. And this goes to show the importance of listening when communicating. People want to be heard, but it's also out of respect we should listen. We might have our views and you should share them, but also hear what the others have to say. You might not agree and this is fine, but at least understand them, hear them and let them know you're totally engaged. Which leads me to the next point, and something many struggle to do when they talk to people. Engage in conversation by making eye contact. We convey so many thoughts and emotions with our eyes, and as many say, they're the windows to our soul. Make eye contact when speaking and listening, because doing so will help create a connection with the person you are speaking to. It doesn't have to be constant, but it should be regular. Now, you might feel discomfort in doing so, but if you do, think about why this is. You see, if you're uncomfortable with making eye contact with others, it's because you feel a sense of vulnerability and a lack of confidence. However, just as these can be seen from a negative light, you can also learn to understand the power that making good eye contact can have. If you make eye contact and build a connection to those you speak to, you'll have a better chance of conveying your point and fully have their attention. The next way to be a good communicator is to relax and breathe as you speak. Many fail to do this, especially when nervous, either talking to their crush or to an audience. The problem is, when you do this, people will naturally be able to pick up on the nerves and the message you're trying to convey will lose its power. Before you speak, take a breath. This will help you in multiple ways, as first taking deep breaths helps to calm you, as the action triggers neurons in your brain which tell the body it's time to relax. Wayne Dyer does this especially well when he speaks to an audience. He will take time to draw breath and relax himself as he speaks, especially in those moments he makes personal connections. And this is reflected in his body language, which is our next point. What you do with your body is significant when speaking to people, as every action can convey a message. Many speakers, when speaking to an audience, will have moments when they are relaxed and put one hand in their pocket, but gesture using the other. This conveys they are in a relaxed state, but by gesturing with their free hand they still emphasize the points they wish to. It helps the audience understand that in this moment they can relax, but there is still something important to listen to.
And I'd like to suggest to you that inspiration is not something that comes and goes. It's not something that you have one moment and then in the next moment it disappears. And this is a whole new look at inspiration. To me, inspiration is living in spirit at all times and catching ourselves when we find ourselves disconnected from the spirit from which all of us emanated.
Now let's use this in a real world or everyday example. A young man is interested in a girl who has her arms crossed and is turned away. In this scenario, the girl's stance is communicating that she does not want him to approach her. She's taken a naturally defensive or protective stance. However, if she's facing the young man and has an open body posture, then the chances are that she is in a more relaxed state and willing to engage in conversation. These are fairly unsubtle gestures, but you can see how the girl in this example is communicating to the man whether she wants him to approach her or not. We can read incredibly subtle cues when we communicate, so work to communicate with your body as much as you do with what you say. That isn't to say that your words are any less important. How you speak is critical in interaction. And this leads to our next point: speak clearly and avoid using filler words. What are filler words? Well, they're basically when you say or like constantly as you speak. These break the flow of communication, show a lack of confidence in what you say, and can make it hard to keep the audience's attention. Instead, just add a pause when you speak. You see, when you usually say these filler words, you would normally have a full stop if you were to write your sentence. As you speak, you sense the urge to use fillers to try and avoid awkward silences or give you a moment to think. If that's the case, it's important to think and speak, as the pause, which is our next point, is a useful tool in communication. You see, pauses give you a chance to emphasize your point and give the listener a chance to really think about what you've just said. Pauses can be an incredibly powerful tool in communicating. Wayne Dyer, when he speaks, might use fillers when speaking in a more relaxed state. This can at times be an endearing quality as it shows your humanity. However, when he speaks about a point he really wants to make sure the audience understands and hears, there are no fillers and there are pauses. When it's all done and over and the talk or conversation is finished, it's these moments where you have spoken clearly and allowed for what you have said to sink in that will be the most memorable for those listening to you. Now, it's great to say speak clearly without fillers and use pauses, but how do you develop the skills to do this? Well, practice makes perfect, but before that you need to educate yourself and grow your vocabulary. Wayne Dyer is versed in various philosophical and ideological texts that he draws inspiration from, whether it be religious texts such as the Bible or the Bhagavad Gita, or cultural practices around the world. When communicating, it is often a horrible situation when you know what you want to say, but don't know which words best express it. Worse still is expressing something, but losing the efficacy and influence of your statement because the words you use don't emphasize your point well enough. Grow your vocabulary, because doing so helps you grow to be a more effective communicator and directly influences your ability to converse with others. To speak well is key, but equally important in communication is to build a connection to your audience or the individual you are speaking to. You can do this in multiple ways, either showing empathy towards their individual circumstances, or as Wayne Dyer does this in his speech, you can talk about yourself. He does this particularly well when he speaks about the difficulties his own family had when his daughter had struggled with her own life. He reflects on his own actions and shows how he learned and grew from the experience as he learned practices from other cultures when faced with similar situations. By sharing his experiences, Wayne Dyer builds a connection with his audience and importantly gives them an opportunity to relate to his personal circumstances. However, when speaking, always remember the tone and inflections of your voice need to be varied and in line with what you say. People will concentrate better as you change the tone as you speak. Wayne Dyer again uses this to great effect. He has a moment in his talks he speaks about a boy named Ryan, who inspired people around the world as he worked to have wells built in Uganda after he was taught how people suffered without clean water in the country when in school. Dyer uses this opportunity to speak of how Ryan inspires him, something he communicates incredibly well with the tone of his voice.
And he said no, and his mother said, "You're saying no to going on Oprah?" "I can't do it at this time." And they changed the date so he could be on. When she talked about her most inspiring young people, "You inspire me, you inspire me, you inspire me." Thank you.
In another part of his talk, he speaks about a personal story where a butterfly lay still on his finger, and possibly the most spiritual moment of his life. He's excited and speaks in a high tone to convey his excitement and adds humour to the story, which is our next point, as by making jokes you can bring joy to others, and as people like to laugh you will endear yourself to them. The key is in telling the right jokes, as if you make jokes at the expense of those you speak to, the likelihood is you won't be received well. There are many types of jokes you can tell to help build rapport, but often don't hesitate to make self-deprecating jokes, as poking fun at yourself can be both inoffensive and yet humorous. Wayne Dyer does this to great effect when he speaks about the butterfly, because when he does, he's well aware of the absurdity of the situation he's found himself in.
I immediately reached for my cell phone, and I called Joanna, you remember? And I said, "Joanna, there's a monarch butterfly on my finger. You know what I just read to you this morning?" She said, as she always does, she's so sweet and peaceful, "Meditate." I said, "Meditate? This is a monarch butterfly. I just wrote about him and Jack and all." She said, "Just go meditate on him." So I call another number, and I call Reed, the president of Hay House, my buddy, all right? And I said, "Reed, I read to you this morning about a monarch butterfly. I've now got one on my finger. It flew to me." He said, "Get a picture." I said, "What are you talking about? Get a picture? I've got my bathing suit on and a cell phone. I don't have a camera." He said, "We've been thinking about what's going to be on the cover of the book." He said, "This is perfect." Right away thinking about, this is inspiration. This is like it's come to you for that reason. Get a picture, get a picture. So I took Joanna's advice and I meditated.
And this leads to the final and the most important point of all, which is don't just talk, but take your audience on a journey. Wayne Dyer's talk was excellent on multiple levels, from how he communicated to his audience, but what made it so memorable to me personally, a person who has watched a number of talks from a variety of speakers, was he gave me highs and lows that very few can. When he spoke, I found myself laughing, crying, feeling inspired and motivated and shocked at the horrors of what people can do to one another. By the end of the talk, I felt exhausted, but I felt satisfaction and fulfillment in a way which very few speakers can achieve. The journey engaged me in a way which just speaking could never do. And that's the end of the list. Apply the points in this video and your communication skills can improve substantially.
I want to show you what kind of a person he was, and I'm including this because it's about finding inspiration in anything. Like Immaculee's story tells about finding inspiration in the midst of a genocide. Most of us won't have to encounter such an undertaking in our lives. But there are still many horrors and many difficulties and many struggles that show up in our life. And when we're in spirit, we move away from a sense of feeling sorry for ourselves and instead look for what the lesson is. Steve and Anita had a daughter named Rachel. Rachel was brutally murdered, and her body was left. And they wrote to Ram Dass, who was their teacher, and they said, how can we, after losing our daughter, how can we find spirit? How can we be inspired? How can we find God in events such as this? And there are many of you watching who have encountered these kinds of acts and have also encountered accidents and things that just don't seem to make sense. People just taken away from us at what are seemingly the wrong times. And this is what Ram Dass wrote to Steve and Anita. One of the most beautiful letters I've ever read. He said, "Dear Steve and Anita, Rachel finished her work on earth and left the stage in a manner that leaves those of us left behind with a cry of agony in our hearts as the fragile thread of our faith is dealt with so violently. Is anyone strong enough to stay conscious through such teachings as you are receiving? Probably very few. And even they would only have a whisper of equanimity and peace amidst the screaming trumpets of their rage, grief, horror, and desolation. I can't assuage your pain with any words, nor should I. For your pain is Rachel's legacy to you. Not that she or I would inflict such pain by choice, but there it is, and it must burn its purifying way to completion. For something in you dies when you bear the unbearable, and it is only in that dark night of the soul that you are prepared to see as God sees, and to love as God loves. Now is the time to let your grief find expression, no false strength. Now is the time to sit quietly and speak to Rachel, and thank her for being with you these few years, and encourage her to go on with whatever her work is, knowing that you will grow in compassion and wisdom from this experience. In my heart, I know that you and she will meet again and again, and recognize the many ways in which you have known each other. And when you meet, you will know in a flash what now it is not given to you to know, why this had to be the way it was. Our rational minds can never understand what has happened, but our hearts, if we keep them open to God, will find their own intuitive way. Rachel came through you to do her work on earth, which includes her manner of death. Now, her soul is free, and the love that you can share with her is invulnerable to the winds of changing time and space. In that deep love, include me. In love, Ram Dass.
Thanks for watching today. So which of these communication skills do you think you can improve on? Let me know down in the comment section below. If you enjoyed the video, please share it with others and consider subscribing for more content like this.